Well, hello again to our viewers. We welcome you again to another program, Our Health program where we empower you to improve your health and well-being. And of course, we continue these very interesting conversations with Dr. Lionel Gaskin Myers. And today we want to look at something that, well, encompasses all of the aspects of health, and it's your soul, your mind, and body. And Doc, I know that's the name of your enterprise, and I've always wondered why this, and I said I promised that we'll do a program on that. You know, what was the thinking behind naming your enterprise the Soul Mind Body Institute? Hope I didn't stump you there too much.
I'll give you an idea. I was going to presentation college, and I think I was in Form 2, and I was in the children's library. Mm-hmm. And one day I was talking to the librarian, and she says, no, you don't have to wait until you're 16 years old to join the adults library. You could join it if you're in secondary school, and you reach, I think it was Form 2 or Form 3. And I said, can I? So I went down to the library and I found out. And the librarian says, yes, as long as you could bring proof, bring a little note. So I got them to write a note, and I carried it. And I got admitted to the adults library.
Yes.
The first book I went to look for was Marie Corelli was a Catholic nun who got thrown out of the nunnery and excommunicated from the church. But she wrote books. So I wanted to know what this awesomely terrible thing that this woman had done.
Yes.
That caused that. And being the person I was, I found out that they had her books in the library. So I went book diving with great enthusiasm.
Yes.
I bought the books. I got the books, and I went home and I read them. And when I finished, I went,
Yes.
you know, I was waiting for high drama.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. That is what they
all kinds,
excommunicate the lady for.
Yes, all kinds of deviousness.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really see the deviousness. It also reminded me that I was living in England, and you know, in the 60s things were still tight, you know. And I was going out with this Swedish girl, and I went to Sweden for holidays. And she lived in Alingsås, which is right close to Gothenburg. So I got up one morning, and my future mother-in-law asked me, what you going to do? I says, I am going to the pornographic cinema. So she looked at me and she says, why? I said, because we don't have pornography at home, and we don't have pornography in England, right? But I am going to go to the pornographic cinema. She says, why? I said, I want to see what it's all about. So I went to the pornographic cinema, and sure enough, I saw nude people doing nude things, and I sat in the back. Right? And then they had a second show. You know, they had 3 or 4 things. But by the time we got to the end of the second one, I was bored. I said, man, I don't have to come anywhere to see this. I normally do this.
Yes,
So I walked out of the cinema very disappointed, thinking that there's going to be some powerful thing that I was going to get. I was all right. And then one day we went by the beach, one of the lakes. You know, there's plenty of lakes. And we got there early, and I took out my deck chair and I put it down, and I already carried my book to read. And I'm lying there reading, and this bus comes down, and there's a bus filled with young ladies, 15, 16, 17, 18. And they all walked out, and I'm here, and they walked out, and they were all in front of me here, standing up. And I saw one, and she took off her blouse, and then she went, and she took off her brassiere. I said, I wonder where this is going, boy. She took off everything.
Yes.
And I'm lying there on my muggle, you know, and everybody else starts.
Trini come to town.
So I take my book, I put my towel, and I look as disinterested as I can.
Yes.
So my girlfriend walks across and she says, honey, what are you going to do for the rest of the day? I say, honey, I'm doing it. The point I'm trying to make is that when things are made arcane or made hidden, they seem to have a certain kind of allure to them. Yes. Certain kind of, if I was to see that.
Yes.
The first time I went on a nudist beach in Europe, I was thoroughly disappointed. I see all kind of big fat belly and breasts hanging on here, and you know. I said, man, this is not what I envisaged.
A nudist beach to me.
Let us go back. So the point I am making, everything gets hidden, it gets mystified.
Yes.
And so you say, and disconnected. So I suppose when you start life, and then I was lucky because at the age of 20, I was working for Edchem, and I suddenly decided I didn't want to work nights and do this for the next 40 years of my life, and then to come out and retire and say I retired.
Collect a pension.
That sounded banal. Right?
Kill all your passion for life.
Yes. So I promptly got on a boat and went away, and landed in England by myself, and found a friend living in Stockwell, and I knocked on the door, and he opened the door, and he says, "How did you get here?" I said, "By the tube." He says, "And how did you get on the tube? How did you know how to come?" I bought a A to Z. Thank God for my Scouts training.
Yes, indeed.
I didn't need to ask anybody anything.
And you didn't have Google Maps in them.
No, I had an A to Z map. I did it, right?
On paper.
And I think it's so you're looking at, you're saying that in everything that you do, there are answers behind the answers.
Yes.
And what we normally do, we normally take exactly what is said to us with no questioning.
As gospel.
If we want to bring it up to date, we're lucky in Trinidad. We're lucky because we have CNN, Fox News, Russian RT on the same television. And a few months ago, we had this big bust-up in Crimea. And Russian RT is showing the people in Crimea voting to go back to Russia. And CNN is showing you tanks invading Crimea. That is not existent. And you're saying the propaganda stuff is really, really super cool. You know, so I mean, it gets to a point where once you begin to recognize that, you begin to say, when I watch ISIS cutting over a man's head, are they really cutting off the man's head? Or is it a whole program now? You begin to doubt everything that you see. Because you want to know what is the truth. But in order to find the truth, you have to go from all angles to find. And when you go to all angles, the picture that emerges is not a picture that which is what you were shown. So you realize that we're in a constant, it's like the people who control this place in a constant battle for my mind. So from very young, I started to try to define what is my mind. Do I own my mind? How do I own my mind? And if I own it, how do I know that what I am having it that I think I own is not somebody else's own? And then you have this mysterious thing called the soul. So, you know, and somebody gives you all kinds of explanations about the soul. So I'm a digger. So I am going to go and dig. I remember when I landed in London, I joined every esoteric group I could find. The Theosophical Society, the Alice Bailey School. I went and take exercises with the Tibetan monks and the Hindu guys doing yoga. I was in everything, man. Because
you just needed to find out.
I wanted to know.
Yes, you were probing.
And very quickly, after questioning and cross-questioning, because I want answers, and if you don't have answers, don't give me no double talk. And you keep doing that. And then as you keep doing that, a pattern emerges. And then what happens is the pattern that you're learning challenges the beliefs that have been inculcated into you. And as a certain thing comes at that point, the devil comes to visit you. That makes sense?
Well,
If somebody constructs something in your mind, and they construct it with barriers, with limits, don't do this, that's a sin, you'll go to hell. You know, don't do this, it's a sin, you'll go to hell. You you have limits. I mean, I remember when I was about 17, 18, I discovered girls. Whoa. You know, all the time I was swimming in the sea, climbing over San Fernando Hill, which doesn't exist anymore. And things like that. You know, we used to take the boats out of the scout house and we would row all the way down past the creek to go to, you know, bridge and go up there and catch typical oysters and things.
Come back up
the road, you know. So I was thin and scrawny, but don't touch me. It's steel. Or you had to swim the far along to be part of the club, and if you couldn't swim the far along, forget it. So you grow up like that, and you suddenly discover girls. So the same rapacity with which you attack the sea, you attack everything else.
I love the word.
So
rapacity, you say.
So Saturday would come and I would go up. I was a good Catholic. My mother brought me up a good Catholic. Thanks her soul. Gave me values. Father, a sin. I only have one sin, you know. What's the sin? Sex. How many times I begin to watch Father kind of what did you do? How did you do it? All right. Say a chaplain and take it. So one day I'm going up the road to church and I said to myself, I said, you know what, this is a hypocritical situation, you know. While I'm making my confession, I'm thinking that tonight I'm going down the road. I said, this is not good. So where I lived, on the top of the hill, we had a plum tree. We used to call it the tree of thought.
That's what part of the country?
That's in San Fernando,
San Fernando
Renewal Street, So we'd walk up and I'd sit on this plum tree. I planted it, it got big. And everybody used to go up there to think. So if everybody see anybody up there sitting on the tree, you say, what happened? You're thinking. That was the philosopher's tree. So I go up by the philosopher's tree.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there.
Okay.
Governor Plum.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Nice too. So one day I said, listen now, God. I always just chat with God. I mean into this brain thing. So listen now, God. This scene that we have here with women, I say, you make women real attractive. You make me tall and red. I'm having problems. I can't say no. I say, so I think I had to go downstairs and live with the fellas downstairs for a little while. Because I ain't able with this thing of coming every week to tell you I'm sorry. And I know in heart I'm not sorry. It must have another answer. So I'll go in and explore the other side for a little bit. I'm going to check you back later. You know what I mean? But don't get vexed with me. and I stopped going to church. I went to another church. The Church of Life. So no, that's what I mean. Because at that point you had to be not scared in order to go and tell God the truth. Because you had to lose your fear of the devil. And I began to understand in later years why in the Jesuit thing we talked about in another program, why the Jesuit priests, they're made to call the devil in front of them and chat. Because obviously in life you have to approach, you have to have every fear that you have inside you, sooner or later you have to confront it. That making sense?
Yes.
I mean, I'm giving you these stories to give you an idea of why it is that in the final analysis I end up calling my thing soul, mind, body. Because I have been looking for my soul. All my life I'm looking for my soul. I don't
want still looking?
Answers. Yeah, still looking.
All right.
I come to the conclusion it's a non-ending search.
Quest, yes.
Because the more you find out, is the more excited you get to find out more.
Yes, okay.
So you think it. So I say, all right. And then you get away and you start digging up in everything and you find that people will talk to you, the Tibetan monks will talk to you about superhuman activities, the opening of certain chakras and the opening of certain microcosmic orbit and macrocosmic orbit. Right? And you learn exercises where you could have sex and not climax, and how to regurgitate the energy. And you say, whoa, in my society, we don't even have an inkling of all these things.
Yes.
And you begin to realize knowledge is a very, very peculiar thing. You have to go out and look for it. You have to question it when you get it. And when you do find it and you find the core of truth inside it, you hold on to it. Because what it does, it is going to make you stronger. It's going to make you more powerful. It's for yourself, not for anybody. It's going to think that. You know, and I remember going to a lecture in UWI, run by the guy who's in charge of the psychiatric department right now. And it was on immigrants who had gone to England in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it was a breakdown of how many of them get mad, how many of them had schizophrenia, how many of them this, how many of that, and everything.
I think it was Selvon wrote a book about that, The Lonely Londoners.
Yeah. So he
one of those.
he finished, and I went across. I was really impressed with it, and I said, "Pleased to meet you," and things like that. I said, "I want to ask you a question. I see you only talk about the losers. What about the supermen?
Yes.
What about the people like me who went, confronted racism, confronted all kinds of prejudices, and still managed to in fact, it didn't knock you down. What it did was it made you,
build you up,
way more efficient, way more
stronger.
I went to work in a place. I was the first black guy to work in that lab. Nobody didn't talk to me for a few months.
It was that deep.
It was that deep, and I just
And you plugged away.
And then it had some young fellas in the lab, and gradually they started ignoring the older heads and chatting with me. And one day they were talking and they were saying, well, we're going down to the Whiskey A Go Go and the Flamingo, which was two clubs in a building. But we don't know. I think they had Georgie Fame or somebody was in there that Saturday. And they said, boy, we don't know if we would get in, you know. They say, you want to go to the club Saturday? I said, all right. Meet me outside the tube station at such and such. He said, where do I say, where do you want to go? Well, the guy who was the bouncer in Flamingo, I used to train with him because he lived up the road. Yeah. Joe Bell, he was runner-up for the middleweight. And he's from Grenada, and they wouldn't let him fight the guy because it looked like he could beat the guy. Yeah. So he used to say, Mayor's boy, you only have to let me at it. So anyhow, we walked up to the Flamingo, and there was a long line, and I walked past him. I said, come on. And Joe was by the door. Hey, Joe, how you going? He said, how much you have? About 4 of them there. He said, all are going. We didn't even pay to go in. And then I go in and I introduced them to all the girls who is normally in the club. They had a ball. So by the time Monday morning, I had moved from bottom ranks to top rank.
Yes. As they say, you're now a ranker.
Yes. But you see, nobody sits down and tell people these things. You only talk about this one get broken and that one get broken. So it means we're studying failures. How are you going to be a Superman if you study failures?
Exactly.
We have to study people who
succeed.
So I disagree with
Selvon at life
with the Lonely Londoners because it had people who lived inside there and who were not lonely. They were alone, but they weren't lonely.
Yes.
No, there's no differentiation for that at all. I remember I came back and I was working. I was the maintenance engineer on the satellite station. And a guy I knew in London got a job, and he came and they put him to work on the satellite station. So he comes into the place, and I'm standing by the console. I won't call any names, it's who he was. And so he looked at me, he said, Mias, what are you doing here? I said, I work here. He said, what happened? Is the cleaner or what? I said, no. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm your boss. He said, you can't be my boss. I know you in London. You're a womanizer. You're always running down woman. Every Saturday night you're in the club. You know. I say, you saw me in the club on Saturday night. But you didn't ask me what I was doing on Monday night and Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night and Friday night. He said, what do you mean? I said, I was studying. I studied physics and electronics. He said, no, I don't believe that. I said,
then why you think I here?
And for about 6 months, every time he passed, he'd watch me and shake. I don't believe it. He said, I always wanted to be like you.
Maybe you should have come to the club too. You'd have learned to balance things.
Yes. Life is a balance.
Of course it is.
Life is a balance. So you live that kind of life and you start digging. When I decided, okay, I wanted to understand the Bible, I didn't go and sit down by no Catholic priest to understand that. I went and looked for Jewish rabbis who were prepared to talk to me and who would tell me, see that word there? That is not what they think it means there, you know. This word is broken up in letters. Each letter has a particular meaning. Therefore, you could translate the word that, but what it really means is this. And a whole new thing opened up. And I'm doing physics, and I'm listening to him. And one day I tell him, I say, you sound like a physics book. Because what he was talking to me was a science. And then I came to the conclusion that what you're looking at and what you were hearing sounded very much like the science. So I said, you know what? It means that the fellas in 3,000-4,000 years ago weren't stupid herdsmen. They were very advanced technically. And then you go and you lime in with the yogis and them, and they say, read the Vimana Shastra. And the Vimana Shastra is about how to build a flying saucer. And then how to train the pilot. And then what the engine and how the engine works. And what they say sounds plausible. So I said, this doesn't make sense. Everybody's telling me that these people are stupid, and all this story they have about fighting in the air and shooting each other down and exploding what appears to be atomic weapons. So you see, and then you come upon a book where they talk about the Germans in World War II, and they talk about the Project of the Bell, where they're trying to simulate what the fellas were doing in the Vimanas. And you say, hey, I am being told a whole lot of things that are not quite right. That it have shortcomings. Up to now, it have shortcomings in everything that we hear. So,
and I don't mean to stop you, but I want to in terms of where the body came in, the body aspect of it, you're getting to that, or because we did the soul, we did the mind first, then soul.
We'll get into everything. Good. Because from the time I was small, I was training. At the age of 16 and a half, when I looked at myself, 6'2", and weighing 140 pounds.
Yes, and red.
I said, we got we got to fix that. So I went to the gym. And the only fellas in the gym, they weren't nice in those days. Right? So they put me in the gym and they said, well, you got to lift this. So I find out what I could lift. And they make me lift 3 sets of 10 and 3 sets of 10. And they say, good, you're feeling good. And I was normally fit, so I doing the thing. I said, how you feeling? I'm feeling good. And I went home. And I went to bed. And I got up next morning.
And you couldn't move.
I couldn't move. Oh, you know what? I couldn't move. I couldn't believe that a human
being. I could relate to that experience.
could have so much pain.
Yes.
And I'm lying on the bed and I'm saying, big stone. I pelted everybody with big stone.
Yeah.
Right? So I get up, and for 2 or 3 days I had a massage and thing. And I go in the gym, and as I walk in, everybody start to laugh. And that was it. I started. I remember in the first month, I gained 20 pounds. I come home one Saturday and my mother was cooking a pot of soup. She has 7 children.
Yes.
Wife and father. She cooking a pot of soup. And I walk in about 12 o'clock and I say, God, I could eat that whole pot of soup. She says, you can't. I say, who tell you I can't? I tell you, I could eat that whole pot of soup. She said, challenging you. I said, good. So she do, and she go to take out stuff out of the pot. I said, no. Put the whole pot there. And I sat down and I ate the whole pot of soup that was for the whole family. When I get up, we're very quiet out here. And I said, oh God. I go
so what the others did that day?
No, she made more. Everybody was interested in me drinking this pot of soup. But the point about it is that when I started lifting weights, I became voraciously hungry.
Yes.
Right?
It does that too.
So within the space of 6 months, I was a totally different person. You know? So everything that you have, you know, I look at kids now and I say, they don't challenge anything. They don't challenge anything. I remember I got to the age of 49. I was doing well, doing my engineering. I had 2 or 3 consultancies. Had a nice farm in Wallerfield, little kids, wife, mortgage only about 3 months to finish, and I'm 49 years old. And I'm coming up the road, and I ain't feeling right for a few months, like something wrong in my life. I have everything going, I have everything going pat, but something ain't right. Making a little money, doing well, my farm beginning to pay its way and things. And I go home and I tell my wife, I say, something wrong in my life. I don't know what it is. And then one morning I get up and I say, you know what? I'm not dreaming. All while I was buying farm and building house on farm, I was dreaming. The minute I had no dreams, and my job as an engineer had become mundane, because when it come to putting down factories and things like that, I could do that in my head.
Yes.
I
You
had
could
to
do as they say,
think
you could
about
do it
it.
in your sleep.
Yes, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
I want this here and I want that there. Good,
Yeah.
but don't put that there. Put it here. The line, the flow line, you know. How much that cost? Ballpark between X and Y. The figures just run around in your head. So then I realized that what had happened is I'd become bored.
You lost your passion.
Yeah, I'd lost my passion.
The fire had gone out.
I went to one day and I tell my wife, I said, I lost my passion. She said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to go to the States. She said, why? I said, I want to go and study medicine. Because I always had a leaning for, helping people. But I don't want to study Western medicine. I don't like the drugs thing. I say, I'm going to find acupuncture. She always wanted to go to the States, so she said, well, fine. And one of the things that strikes me about that is that I had a farm in Wallerfield, and they had plenty farms around me for sale. And I went and I asked for a certain amount of money for my farm. I got the money I asked for. The guy didn't even question it, because my farm was paying, and I showed him how it was paying. And I went to the lawyer's office, and when we signed the deed, because you don't get no transfer deed there, he handed me a check for $250,000 with no deed,
No nothing.
no nothing.
No papers.
And the lawyer told me, he said, I've never seen this in my life. I've never seen this in my life. And I walked out, he says, it's all right, I will get all the deeds transfer and everything. And I went off to the States. Got myself a flat in a place. In fact, my stepson got it when he came up. And sat down to look for acupuncture schools, only to find out that there was one round the corner. There are two in Miami.
Yeah.
One was in the north, and one was right round the corner. I could walk to it. Go around there, walk in, and say, I want to see the principal. The guy says, I'm a principal. What do you want? I say, you from Trinidad? When I pick up the accent, he says, yes. Was I from Trinidad too? He said, I realize that. He says, I'm the principal. I'm the owner of the school. I left there already signed up to go to school within 2 hours. And I said, everything worked.
Working, just
that's the thing I noticed, is that every time you have everything and you have everything
lined
what
up.
you want,
Yes.
magic happens to put you in that place.
Yes.
That's been the story of my life. Just when you think nothing going on. So you begin to understand that you probably have something inside you that you have to tap.
Yeah.
But you don't know how to tap it.
Yes.
Because the society that we have doesn't give us that scope. The level of what we call education is banal.
Yes.
It's regurgitated stuff that you put out. And so you say, how am I going to take what I have and now bring it to a point where it could make the truth? So having done nearly 30 years of engineering and going to study acupuncture, which was very good because acupuncture is energy. So I soon quickly realized that acupuncture was really the electronic circuit of the body. And what you call a storage point is a capacitive point, and what is a point that you could move energy is an inductive point. You could see all the analogies, you know. So I did very well at it. It was like walking into something similar. So, but as the soul and as the body, you had the emotions thing, right? How does the emotions fit into it? And then how does the mind work? So in all of that, I started getting interested in things like hypnosis, meditation, and things like that. And the hypnosis thing didn't really take off until I got to the States, because there you could get access to people who would teach you hypnosis and join the Hypnosis Guild and go up every year to the conferences and learn a lot of stuff. So that got very exciting. And then as you go along, you got deeper and deeper into how the mind functions. And not only how the mind functions, the thing about hypnosis is how to change the mind. You know, when you watch somebody come to a class and the person can't stand up on a chair because they scream and shake and fall down in fear. And you
Fear
watch
of what, the height?
the height,
Okay.
the height of the chair.
Of the chair. Yes, yes, yes.
And watch the guy running the class sit down and talk to her, apparently talk to her for 10 minutes, and then tell her, you're right across the road from Disneyland, go and ride this, the things. She come next morning and tell you she ride the
Ferris
mantis
wheel.
something
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
go up and
Yeah,
fall
yeah,
down.
yes, yes,
Not
yes.
once, but 4
Yes,
times.
yeah.
Run in the classroom, jump on the chair and say, yes! You see, this is absolutely fascinating. How you could take away a person's fear like that in few minutes, right? What is it in the mind that holds that fear? If you have a person, you begin to realize that as I graduated in acupuncture, and I started seeing people, even in the clinic, you began to realize that sickness was a complexity. I had a guy come to me and he couldn't walk properly. He was in his 70s, and I was all gung-ho, you know, I was training and working on the thing. And I started treating him. And he came for several weeks until I got him where he was walking, the pain had gone, and everything, feeling good with myself. And he says, something is missing. He says, I should be all right, but I still ain't feeling right. So he comes on Saturday and he tells me, he says, I had a dream. He said, not a sleeping dream, a waking dream.
Yeah, yeah.
He said, I was sitting in my chair. He said, and I remember an incident. He used to be a pilot. He used to fly all over the world. Where a day I wanted the plane quickly, and the mechanic was dawdling. He says, and I had the ability to fire him. He said, and I worked him over until the guy was crying and begging for his job. He says, and I really took advantage because it's like I wanted to break him. He said, I got into the plane and flew off. He said, but I felt very badly about it. He says, it worried me. He said, it worried me for months. He said, then I kind of forgot it. He says, and I'm sitting down home. He says, and suddenly the guy is in front of me, and I'm doing the same thing again. He says, and all the emotions that were there
came out.
come
Yeah.
up. So I said, what did you do? He said, I didn't know what to do. I said, well, go back, go in your chair, sit down, call it up. And when you call it up, tell the guy you're sorry. He said, but the guy ain't there. I said, that's what you think. The guy is there. He's there in your mind. Maybe there's a mental connection somewhere. So he went home, he says, and he did it, and he ended up crying. You know. He said, and it's almost like the guy came symbolically in his dream and hugged him and told him it was all right. I said, well, maybe the spirit of a person has the ability to do these things and we don't know anything about it. So when I finished treating him, he says, I'll tell you something now. He said, I don't need to come back to you. I said, right on, yeah, you know. And he left. And then I saw him about 6-8 months later coming down the road again. Everything good, yes. You know, his wife came to see me because she was very intrigued as to how I got her husband walking. So very, very quickly, I began to realize that illnesses don't only reside in the body. They reside inside people's emotions, they reside inside their mind, and sometimes you even find it residing inside their souls. Because the soul is not a spotless place. You know. So the problem with that now, when you begin to see that, is how do you get people to move? And you know, I'd get into to hypnosis, and then I had a girl the other day, very bright. She came and she sat in the class, and she said, she sat in my office, and her mother, I was treating her mother, and then she looked at me and she says, Dr. Myers, you do hypnosis? I says, yes. She said, that don't work, you know, and you had to get a permission for it, and I said, I agree with you. And I started talking to her. And then I started, by the time I talked to her for a couple of sentences, I said, you're feeling good inside, yeah, feel the smile. And she smiled, and she said, yeah. And suddenly she stopped. She says, you're putting me into a trance.
You think?
No, I ain't putting you into a trance. You was in a trance already. So she said, well, how did you do that? So I started to explain to her language and the use of language and how we don't know what language does to us. But when I sit down to watch television, it's totally different from how other people sit down to watch television, because I'm seeing all kind of subtle nuances and things that are putting people into trances because of choices of words. So that gives you a kind of head start in everything. And so you begin to understand that all these things are really tools to use.
Yes.
Lady comes to me and she says, I fell down the steps. I can't walk without holding on to a wall.
A railing and so, yeah.
I say, oh, her friend comes with her. We're sitting down in the office, and I said, so you want to change? She said, yeah, I don't like this. I say, you know the part of you that is afraid? She says, yeah. I say, take it, bring it outside, put it there to stand up. See it there. And when you have it there, just wave your hand and let me know that you have it there. She said, I say, no, you know the part of you that's very confident, that want to get rid of this thing, that always in life you conquer things with it. She says, yes. Say, your super self. I say, bring it, put it to stand up next to it. Say, and she did it. I said, now take the super self, let the super self hold the weak one by the hands and walk it out the door, walk it down the steps, outside into the sunlight. I said, the only thing is the sunlight doesn't affect the super self. But that other one, it will puff like smoke, you know, like a Dracula film.
Yes, yes.
It disappears. I said, go down and do it, and when you do it, raise your hand and let me know that you've done it. She said, no, come back up. Come back in your body. By the time she left, she walked out the door, walked down the steps, walked to her car with her friend saying, well, what you do? All you do is talk to her. And I realized the power of words and the power of symbols. And when you have the ability to be able to do that with people, it places a whole new emphasis on what we perceive to be healing.
Yes.
She had had that problem for 7 years and had gone to everybody. It took me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. But I learned that from Bandler. Bandler is very good at that, how to get that. So, you know, you open a can of worms and you say, why did I call my business Soul, Mind, Body? Because I call it Soul, Mind, Body because when you live in a certain way and you push that to the limit, it creates a certain change inside you. You know, we were talking just now, and you say, it reached a point where I say, why am I living here? Why am I living here? And then I say, well, what is space? Why is it that we have this thing around, we call it space? What creates space? I had to go digging. And in digging, you find that the earth spins on itself. The earth spins around the sun. And then the earth and the sun is spinning in a giant helix going somewhere. And at every degree of spin creates a certain orientation inside you that you'd find eventually as space. Up, down, east, west, north, south. When you think about it, the sun rises in the east and it comes down in the west. So you have one orientation, north, south, up, down, you fall down, you know. So all these spins cause that. And in causing that and giving the brain that reference, you end up with what you call space. So space is an illusion of spin. I'm listening to the astronauts in the Soyuz, and the guy is looking out the window and he sees this thing passing. So he's looking at it. He said, that looked like some kind of flying saucer or something, you know, some alien craft. I don't recognize it. So he calls his friend. He says, come and watch this thing here. And the friend comes and he watches it for a little while. And he says, no, it isn't. He says, what it is? He says, a speck of dust on the window outside. That's moving. Then he looks carefully. He says, yeah. So he asks the guy, he says, well, why it is I did that? He says, well, I've been here a little longer than you. He said, when you look out into space and you have no reference, your sense of space disappears. He said, and that's what happened to you. He said, you have to learn to pick up new references inside there so that you can differentiate between what is a speck of dust and what is actually vehicle flying outside. So you begin to understand the reality. So we live in pseudo realities that we never even bother to think about. We accept them as being the norm. And in accepting them as being the norm, we never begin to find out what we can do, what we can't do, what we can control and what we can't control. If you come and I'm sitting down here and you say, what are you doing? I said, nothing. You say, you must be doing something, you must be thinking about something. No, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just sitting here. I said, what are you doing? I said, well, I hear in the fan, I hear in the air conditioner, I hear in the clock, I hear in the cars outside in the road. But he mad, you know, I hear with him. It's just that I'm saying to you that there's different levels of understanding, different levels of connections, and that there's nobody in our society to teach us those things. So therefore, an approach to that is totally outside our ken. You read Lynn McTaggart's book and she says they go to Nepal, they get permission from the Dalai Lama to go into this monastery. And they go in and it's winter and it's cold, and the fellas and them agree to talk, and they're talking about everything. And she says they go in the night to sleep, they put them in a room, and everybody get on into thermal underwear and thermal thing and heater in the room, and they close up the window, and it's still cold. It's still comfortable, it's still cold. So then they get up the next morning and they pass in the room where the fellas, the monks and them were sleeping, and they look inside, and the window open, and the fellas lying down on a hard bed with nothing covering them, fast asleep. So they went and they get all the instruments and they check, and they say, well, how come you could do that? The guy says, oh, we trained to do that. And then she finds out that the initiation for the monk is to go and sit down in the snow and get a wet blanket thrown around him, and he have to dry out the blanket. 40 degrees below zero. And when he dry out that one, they'll wet it and put it around him again, and they start counting how much he dried out. And the commission how much he dried out tells you how much two more he can generate. Everybody in the West will tell you that is nonsense. That is impossible. So you have one set of people living in one part of the world doing one thing, and the other set of people just dismisses it as nonsense because it is outside the ken of their experience. And that is really the problem that we have. You know, you read in acupuncture that if you go to China and you have cancer, you could go into a Western hospital and get your chemo and radiation therapy. Or you could go to a hospital where you do breathing. You get up every morning, you do breathing exercise, and you eat a certain kind of meal, and you'll stay there for 6 months. But the rate of healing in that hospital is way higher than the Western hospital. The thing about the Western hospital is a quick fix. You see, cut out.
Yes.
Come here once a week, once every 3 weeks for radiation and chemotherapy, and after 6 months. Whereas in this thing, you had to get up and spend a few hours every day doing breathing exercises.
Yes.
But the breathing exercises changes your whole metabolism. You would never see anything written about it. I was reading a book by a Western scientist, 2 Western scientists who did a lot of work on the channels, the acupuncture channels, and how they work, and what is the equivalent, the physical and things like that, proving that they exist the same as nerves. He said, and they're from recognized universities, and they couldn't get their work published in any peer-reviewed journal. Fellas would say, yeah, it's good work, but we don't print that sort of stuff. In other words, they are constraints. They're constraints. So we rarely live, if I want to be a little bit crass and say, we live in a world of measured stupidity. And unless you're prepared to go out and dig, you would never find. So just like the guy who we talked about last week who had memory healing, and he talked about food to cure Alzheimer's. It made sense to me. I decided to talk about it in the program. A lot of people would say, that is nonsense. That can't be possible. But he had his sources, and his sources were scientifically reliable. And what he is saying made scientific sense. So sometimes you begin to understand that a person who calls himself a scientist, most of the time is not a scientist because he has a whole set of preconceptions as to what is right and what is wrong.
Yes, yes.
You know? And that always causes a
so
problem.
what you're saying in all of this, Doc, to my mind, this speaks to a certain kind of power, even in terms of, you know, illnesses and so on, which you, I'm just paraphrasing here. It has to do a lot with our maybe our psychosomatic or whatever makeup, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And it seems to my mind that you know, to change things as has happened in your life, you need to acquire a certain kind of power. Am I right in so saying? And if I'm right, you know,
I would say power.
how do you acquire
a certain kind of inquisitiveness. There's a better
Yeah.
word. The ability that everything that is said to you gets challenged.
Yeah.
Gets
But
challenged
more
for
beyond
its
the
authenticity.
inquisitiveness.
Yes.
I'm asking, do you, I mean, in terms of changing things or using the power of the mind to change things or to have some kind of positive effect over your life?
Yes.
You know, how is that acquired? Is that something you were blessed with, or you think that humanity generally has not tapped into that kind of resource?
Well, my family always tell me I'm weird.
Well, maybe some of us need that kind of awareness. You know, it might help.
But no, I think that most of it is work, in the sense that if you have that kind of mind where you go out and everything that you learn, you know, I used to get 0 in religious knowledge all the time because I'd ask questions.
Too many questions.
And I'd ask
Yes,
probing questions.
Yes.
And what, you know, when you're young and you have a brother standing up in front of you, presentation brother, and he have on his gong, and, you know, he goes to church, you think that he have all the answers.
Yes.
And he prepared to answer you. And you ask him 2 or 3 probing questions, he tell you, don't ask me that kind of questions. And you persist, and you get 0 at the end of the day. 0 out of 10,
Yes.
regularly.
Yeah.
You don't get 0 out of 10 because you're being irascible or you're being disturbing. You ask because you're trying to understand the depth of your spirit. And all you're meeting is a wall.
Yeah.
And it takes you a while to realize that he don't know too.
Or maybe he's purposely hiding the answers.
Or maybe he's purposely hiding the answers. But as you go along in life, you find that the people who really know the answers, when you genuinely go to them and ask them the questions, they answer. I was in a Taoist conference a couple of weeks back. The guy is very famous. He's an American guy. He spent 30-something years in the monasteries in thing, very famous martial artist and all that. You know. And we're there for a couple of days, and I said, this guy looks like he knows what he's talking about, because he was making us do certain exercises to build the energy and things like that. So on the 3rd day, I went over to him and I asked him a question. But it was a question to do with very advanced meditation. And he looked at me and he busted out laughing. And he says, well, let me tell you what I did. You know, he says, and when I finish telling you what I did, I'll tell you when I went to my teacher when I had that problem. And we sat down and we talked for about half an hour. And I said, cool. Because he made it very clear to me as to what was the impediment.
Yeah.
And so we talked. He didn't hold anything back
Yeah.
or anything. He just said, look, this is it. I said, cool. I come back and fellas I can talk with, I say, listen, so and so and so and so and so, so and so. I said, that makes sense. So sometimes you have to go to the place and ask, wait and with respect and ask the right questions,
Yes,
and you always get the answers from people who know.
Yes.
And they will try to explain it in your language so that you understand it. So I think that whenever you have people and they hold back answers because they might know a little bit, but they don't know plenty. Because when you start knowing plenty, what happens is you get a kind of humility for life. And so the only restraint that you have is whether the person who is asking the question is asking the question genuinely.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know,
yes.
and once that is the case, then tell them. You know, so you say, okay, you start to do medicine, but you basically grow up in physics and engineering and electronics. So you have that same way of pulling things apart and categorizing it. And very quickly you come to the conclusion that people are not simple. Right. Very quickly you come to the conclusion that people who get strokes mainly in the midnight, in that late evening.
Yes.
And so you want to know why that is so. And then you come to the conclusion that time matters. And you go back to the old acupuncture theories, and you know that certain organs are dominant at certain times of the day. And you see it in your practice all the time, and you say, the guys who wrote these theories 2,500 years ago, they were not stupid. They were very, very well informed. I was teaching a class on the old books, and I was doing the Shanghan Lun, which is an old treatise about 2,500 years old. And I'm teaching this class to a bunch of American kids. And the guy is saying that the whole atmosphere changes around a person literally every 12 minutes. So you have a 24-minute cycle. So you have a 60 cycle for the day. And the guy says, one of the guys, the smart guys in the back, he says, oh, you see, that's the kind of thing we come here to learn, all that kind of nonsense, all that kind of rat trap.
Focus.
And I stopped him and I said, listen, I said, I will explain it to you. I'll take the time and explain it to you this once so that I could shine a light into your stupidity. You're so stupid. You're so stupid that you don't understand something that a stupid man, as you define, is trying to tell you 2,500 years later. I says the earth has a electromagnetic field, and the electromagnetic field has a cycle. It has several. It has the Schumann cycle, and it also has multiples of that. I say, so you have a 60 cycle per day on the earth, and every 12 minutes it goes positive, and the next 12 minutes it goes negative. I see, if you were observant, you would notice that during the day, if you do this, that is always one side of your nostril, that it is more difficult to breathe up than the other side. I say, and if you waited 10, 15 minutes and you did it again, that the side that was difficult is now open, and the other side becomes stuck. See, that is because the polarity of the electromagnetic force around you changes from positive to negative, and it affects everything, including your stupid ass. You know, the only reason I could tell you that is because I was doing physics, and I know a little bit about astrophysics. And so you realize the question I am asking myself is, how did this gentleman, who is supposed to be a peon 2,500 years ago, knew it in such detail that not even you could understand it? So you begin to understand that books, all books have knowledge. You know, and you look at the I Ching, and the I Ching is for throwing coins and telling your future. Until one of the top DNA guys look at it, and he said, wait, 6 signs, moving lines, combination of how these combine. He says, that is the DNA. He said, and these moving lines is how they could combine and how they can't combine. So after a while, when you want to study the DNA, you hand your I Ching. So go read it. So question asked is, how did the guys 2,000 years ago
have that kind
develop something
that
in fact is an exact replica of what is going on in the smallest part of your body, which is the DNA. You know, and when you do that, you say, hey, this thing is much deeper than you think. You know, there's a tribe out in the Sahara. Anyhow, they follow the Sirian cycle, the cycle of Sirius. And they always knew that Sirius is a double star. And that one, the way how they put it is, that if you had 100 donkeys, it couldn't carry one rock. They couldn't carry one rock from one star because that star is a super heavy star. In astronomy, they call it a white dwarf, super heavy. And the other one is ordinary. So they knew it was a binary star. And they knew the times which the binary star rotated around it very precisely. And then they have these whole sets of songs. So I got a book about 3 years ago where there's somebody translating all the songs. And they say that these songs, these rhythms and these words really telling you how the DNA changes in its evolution. I see. These guys are not stupid people. At one point, they had a science that was very, very developed. And something happened, and it went down. But the traditions that it had stayed inside the songs that they have. So what I'm saying is that in all things, you don't look at a thing and think that the thing is stupid because of your stupidity. You look at the thing and says, maybe there's something to it that I can't appreciate.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And once you do that, you begin to open up a whole world of knowing and knowledge. So that whenever you approach somebody, you bring it back and you say, approaching somebody who is sick. You cannot look at the person. You know, somebody came to me the day before yesterday, they brought a child, and the child had chest pains. She said, oh, she's been to the doctors, they tested her, they do MRI, they do things, nobody can find out what is wrong. And I looked at the little kid and I said, take a breath. Yeah. She said, when I take a breath, I'm feeling the pain shooting across. I said, where does the pain come? She said, it comes from around here. And I laughed and I told the mother, I said, I know what's wrong. She says, what? You see, the child has a disc out of place in the back and it's resting on the nerves, going to the heart and that whole area. She says, what are you going to do? I said, we'll put them on the table and work on it. So I called one of my assistants and I said, go do that for me. She came back and she says, Doc, her whole back was out of place. When I moved all the things, everything just went back, crock, 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 crock.
Wow.
When she got to the point where it was, and she went to oh, that feels good, it disappeared. Said, it is ability of comprehending, asking questions, and coming to the right answer. And sometimes the answers are staring you in the face. She said, well, how you knew it was that? I said, because she said that when she pulled in like that and she stretched, she got a pain. So the pain was, and that the pain was coming round. So you find people with stomach problems that really have discs out of place in their back. Chiropractors would know that. Doctors don't know that because doctors don't deal in that kind of energetics by and large. One or two of them do, but not many.
Yes.
So it is a case of having to have an idea of the whole thing in order to comprehend what you're doing.
Yes.
See, I told you ask
I opened a can of worms. Well, I'm so sorry, but I think it was quite a very interesting discussion.
Oh,
and I suspect...
we can carry on this discussion.
Well, we will have to in the next program.
To levels that is positively mind-blowing.
And which we will do.
Yes.
We can promise our viewers that we will in the next program.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Next time we'll start from the soul.
We start
what
from
is
the soul. Great.
And how it's made
Great.
up.
I'm sure that will make some very
And then
interesting
how it connects to the
discovery.
mind,
Yes.
and how it connects to the body, and how it connects to the emotions.
Yeah, so we will tie
What
everything.
the role the emotions play in the general health of the body, and you know,
Great.
that kind of stuff.
Good. So thank you again, Doc, and of course we want to thank our viewers for joining us, and we would see you around for another program. In the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, just drop us a line, docmyers@yahoo.com. Remember also we have recordings of the program on CDs, so you can have them at your leisure pleasure available at the office. Take care, and we will see you around for another program of In Power Health.